Welcome to ASHRAE's Tech Hour. Today's subject, emotional intelligence, how to use EQ to become a better person professionally and personally. Our speaker today is Karine Leblanc, National Sales Manager of iAir, located in Orlando, Florida. Ms. Leblanc holds a Bachelor of Engineering degree in Mechanical Engineering from École de Technologie Supérieure, University of Quebec. She is a speaker, trainer, coach, author, and leadership ambassador ETS for Not Your Typical Engineer, and a published best-selling author for the book, How to Be Human in a Technical World. Discover the 6 magic skills that will change your behavior and your life.
Welcome to Tech Hour. Today we will talk about how to use emotional intelligence to become a better person at work and at home. So grab a piece of paper and a pen and be ready to take notes. Because knowledge is power, but it's only power if you take action. So do yourself a favor and be intentional today about your learning and applying one takeaway from this presentation. Are you familiar with an iceberg? Remember the Titanic? The uniqueness of an iceberg is that we only see 15% of the entire iceberg. The most important part, the biggest part, is hidden under the surface. Well, when I look at someone, when I look at an individual, I like to compare them to an iceberg. When I look at them, I only see the tip. I see how they look, what they wear, their physique, if they're smiling, but that's a very small portion of the entire person. The most important part is hidden under the surface, just like the iceberg. For example, when you look at somebody, you don't know if they're having any problems. They may have some problems at home, at work, maybe financial problem. Maybe they just went through a breakup. We don't know. It's hidden. It's the same thing for intelligence. The IQ is the part that we see. But the EQ, the emotional intelligence, is hidden. And it's the most important. It is the one that has the most impact. Think about it. The Titanic didn't sink because of the tip of the iceberg, right? So in the next 45 minutes, we will talk about, first, what is emotional intelligence? Second, why is it so important? Third, we're going to talk about 4 core emotional intelligence skills. And lastly, we're going to finish with strategies to improve your emotional intelligence. Ready? Let's go! First, what is emotional intelligence? When I do this presentation at the ASHRAE chapters as a distinguished lecturer, the number one response that I get is emotional intelligence is empathy. Well, let me give you the definition. Emotional intelligence is your ability to understand and manage the emotions within yourself and within your relationship with others. So first, you need to understand, and after you understand, you've seen them, how do you react? How do you respond? How do you control yourself? Emotional intelligence is your ability to manage and understand the emotion within yourself and within your relationship with others. Emotional intelligence is not about always being in a good mood or stop our emotions. We're human, after all, we feel, and this is what keeps us alive. But EQ is knowing when emotions show up and what to do with them, how you react, how do you respond, not pushing them away. If you look at the human brain, it's very complex, but it can be separated in 3 different regions. First of all, there is the primal brain. The primal brain is your instinct, your survival mode. This is where you're breathing, you're eating, the sleeping. This is what regulates the body temperature, your heartbeat. You need it to exist or to survive. Then there is the emotional brain. The emotional brain is related to everything, emotions, feelings, reactions, fear, pleasure, and this is also your long-term memory. So it's like the hard drive. And finally, you have the rational brain, also known as the executive brain. This is everything that has to do with logic, decision-making, problem-solving, reasoning, and it's also called the neocortex. So emotional intelligence is a good balance between your emotional brain and your rational brain. Let's say you're driving on the freeway and somebody cuts you off. If the information goes from your primal brain to your emotional brain and stop there, then you may react and overreact when somebody cuts you off because you didn't wait for the information to go to your rational brain and think, hey, maybe this person missed their exit and they need to cut in front of you. Maybe they're late. This happened to you before. And then you can react properly because now you have the rational and the emotional brain together. You have a good balance. So by doing that, you won't be doing any road rage, for example. You won't be all stressed out and frustrated when that person cuts you off. EQ, emotional intelligence, first became popular in 1995 by the author and journalist scientist Daniel Goleman. Before that, IQ was the only source of success. We would look at someone's IQ and then we would define, oh, that person is going to be successful or they're good for the job. This is until we realized that 70% of the people with an average IQ were doing better than the people with the high IQ. Let me repeat this. 70% of the people with an average IQ were doing better than the people with the high IQ. Then we realized that emotional intelligence was very important and it had a big impact. If you look at what defines a person, it's the intelligence and the personality. Now, let's start with the IQ. The IQ doesn't change. I thought that I could improve my IQ if I read more books, if I would attend more training, if I would watch more TED Talks, but the IQ doesn't change. It's the same if you're 5 years old or 45 years old. The personality, very similar to the IQ, is stable. Meaning, rarely your personality will change drastically and, for example, go from extrovert to introvert or vice versa. So your personality may change over the year, but at the core, it's pretty stable. Finally, the good news. Emotional intelligence is flexible. That's awesome because you can improve it, unlike the personality and the IQ that are stable and don't change much. So why is emotional intelligence so important? Why am I here? Why are we doing a tech hour on emotional intelligence? Because when you think about it, it doesn't matter how high is your IQ, how smart you are, how technical you are, how much you know, if nobody wants to work with you. Let's say you have all those nice qualities, but you have poor relationship skills, communication and collaboration skills. These are very important. I know that ASHRAE members love math. Typically, we love math. So I decided to put some numbers. Did you know that people experience an average of 27 emotions per hour? That's a lot. Actually, when you do the math and you calculate with, let's say, an average of 7 hours of sleep, that's 17 waking hours. So if you do the 27 times 17, that's 459 emotions per day. Then, if you keep going and you look for the entire year, an individual would have emotional experience up to 167,000 times. And according to a study, 2/3 of us are typically controlled by our emotions. So, what do you think? Do you think that emotional intelligence is important? The Carnegie Institute of Technology, they published that 85% of your financial success is due to your personality and ability to communicate, negotiate, and lead. Shockingly, only 15% is due to your technical knowledge. Now, looking at those numbers, 85% and 15%, are these numbers familiar? Do you remember the beginning of my presentation? The iceberg? Yes. The tip, the iceberg, the 15%. See, these are the same numbers. The 15%, the technical IQ, tip of the iceberg, and then the 85%, the below the surface, the emotional intelligence, what has the biggest impact? Maya Angelou is a famous poet, and she said, "People will forget what you said and what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel." Researchers found that right after a 10-minute presentation, that's not very long, only 10 minutes. After 10-minute presentation, the audience will only remember 50% of what you said. And the day after, it will drop to 25%. And the week after, 10% will be remembered. It's because this is all IQ. That's the short memory. That's the conscious mind. That's the thinking part. But the EQ has a much stronger impact than the IQ because we are emotionally connected. Have you ever noticed that you can remember a specific event all into the details that happened years ago? But then if somebody asks you what you did last weekend and you barely remember. You're like, oh, what did I do last weekend? Oh my God. Oh my gosh. So Dale Carnegie said it best. He said, when dealing with people, remember that you are not dealing with creatures of logic, but creatures of emotion. Not long ago, I was speaking to an ASHRAE member at one of the conferences. And he mentioned to me that he remembered going to visit my hometown of Quebec City. He told me that it was in 1997. He was very young. And then I was surprised. I'm like, wow, he remembered exactly when he went. And that's a long time ago. And then I realized after he told me why. He told me that he remembered exactly when he went because this is when Lady Diana had a car accident and passed away. You see here, he had that emotional connection to an event that happened. So then it became a long-term memory. It had more impact. If he didn't have that, maybe he would have not been as specific about remembering when he visited the city. Have you ever heard about the 10-foot rule? The 10-foot rule is awesome. It's directly connected to emotional intelligence. If you go to a retail store and you have an employee, if they follow the 10-foot rule, most likely the store will be successful. Let me tell you why. The 10-foot rule is when an employee is within 10 feet from a customer, that person needs to do 3 things. First, acknowledge, making eye contact with the customer. Second of all, ask if they need something. And third, smile. By doing all of those, this is directly connected to the emotional connection. So now, do you think that the customers are going to want to go back to that store? Absolutely, right? So if I were to ask you right now to write down the characteristics of a great mentor or a wonderful role model, what would you write down? What would you come up with? Very quick, if I ask you to write it down now. I've done this presentation over 100 times in the last 3 years. And when I ask this specific question, typically the results are that the characteristic of a great role model or a great mentor is a good listener, somebody who shows empathy, somebody who's understanding, patient, respectful. And when I looked at all those characteristics, how many of them are related to IQ versus EQ? The thinking brain versus the emotional brain. Every time I ask, I never hear anything about technical expertise, logical thinking, or decision making, or mathematical ability. These are very important, don't get me wrong, but they don't have the same impact. So even if your role model, your mentor, is not as technical, the fact that they have all those beautiful qualities is what makes them great human beings and great mentors. So I have a confession to make. I used to be controlled by my emotions. I put 2 pictures on the slides. The one on the left is in 2004 after I finished engineering school. And that picture was taken at an ASHRAE conference, and it's with my dad, who also happened to be an HVAC professor. The picture on the right is me, but with my 15-year plaque. So I wanted to show this picture to show the difference in time. And the difference between the Karine from the left, the before, which I call the version 1, is very different from the Karine version 2 on the right. When I graduated from engineering school and I started working on the professional world, it was obviously a male-dominated industry. Everybody knows it, the HVAC&R. And instead of staying true to myself, I tried to match my coworkers. So I changed who I was. I became a little bit more aggressive, stronger. I wanted to feel heard. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be taken into the equation. And then I changed. So I didn't have the best emotional intelligence. It was not very good. This is until I had a lunch with my mentor, Mike. We went for lunch. We had sushi. And we sat down, and Mike is asking me, "So, Karine, what's going on with you?" And I'm like, "Nothing. Why?" "Oh, I don't know." "I don't know what?" It's like, "Well, you're always mad." "I'm not always mad." And this is when the light bulb moment happened for me. It's almost like I had an out-of-body experience. I saw myself reacting, and after that day, I decided to make a change. I realized that the woman that I had become with a bad attitude or moody or was controlled by emotions, that was not fun. That was not productive. I was not happy, and I didn't like that person. So I started to do some research and work on myself. And this is when I found emotional intelligence. And I started researching it and learning about it and applying it. And because of that, I changed into Karine version 2, the after picture in this slide. So now it's a whole different story. I'm showing more empathy, more compassion. I'm more open, I'm more patient. It's a big difference. So signs of lack of emotional intelligence can be someone, for example, who gets in a lot of arguments. Maybe you know somebody like that. Or somebody who lacks empathy. Someone who thinks people are oversensitive. I hear that one very often. Someone who's not receptive for feedback. Or maybe an individual that blames others for mistakes. Or someone who struggles to manage their emotions. So these are all signs of lack of emotional intelligence. But what if you don't want to improve your emotional intelligence? You're like, I'm too old for that, Karine. Well, my company doesn't care. People know me like that. They know how I am. They know I'm moody, so it's fine. Or they know my attitude. Well, if you don't want to improve your emotional intelligence, what's going to happen is you're going to have decreased productivity at the office and within yourself. So this may lower the creativity. You will also have lack of collaboration, because who wants to collaborate with somebody with a bad attitude, for example, or somebody who's aggressive, or somebody who cannot control their stress? So you may miss deadlines as well because of this. Something else that can happen is you may have high turnover. When you have employees with low morale, it doesn't help that the emotional intelligence is low. So it may bring some negativity in the office, lack of trust, and poor engagement. Did you know that 43% of women and 32% of men have a co-worker? Not a boss, not a superior, not a supervisor, not a manager, a co-worker. That makes them want to quit. And we know it. People quit people, not companies. So when you lack emotional intelligence, this can create a high turnover. And who wants turnover? Nobody, right? We want to keep our employee because turnover is expensive. I was looking at the last numbers, and the turnover, when you replace somebody, can cost as much as their entire salary. And this is for a technical person. So a technical person, if they're paid $100,000, it may cost them $100,000 to be replaced. And I read that for C-suite employees, it's double the salary. So if you improve your emotional intelligence, then this can reduce the high turnover. Oh, I love this slide. I love this slide. The turnover process. In the past, we used to look at only reason 1 and reason 2 when hiring employees. So we would look at reason 1, which is a superficial one. Okay, the person when they come to their interview, how they dress, their attitude, their personality, their smile. And then we would look at reason number 2. That's a very important part, right? Where did they go to school? How many certifications they have? How much experience? These were like the 2 main reasons for hiring an employee. But we forgot about the most important part, the emotional intelligence one. So let's say you hire somebody who has a good attitude, good behavior, and then they have like very good credentials and a lot of experience, but that person cannot manage their stress under pressure, or cannot communicate with the team, or is not motivating. Then is that person a good candidate? Maybe not. So it's very important to look at all 3 reasons, number 1, 2, and 3, to make sure to include the emotional intelligence. The last thing that could happen if you don't improve or you don't work on improving your emotional intelligence is you may miss on promotions or raise. Because think about it, if you have 2 employees, they both have 10 years of experience, they both have the same degrees, which one will get promoted or which one will get the raise? Is it the person that can communicate better, collaborate better, have better relationship, the go-to person in the office? Or it's the person who has the most technical knowledge? And that is maybe not good with the team. That is maybe more aggressive, more overreacting. Which one would you rather promote or give the raise to? Another thing that can happen is you may lose clients and lose projects. Because think about it, if you have an architect that hires an engineering office, and that engineering firm is hard to deal with in the way they communicate. for example, or they do work, do you think that this architect would hire that engineer after? Or they will find somebody else who has better emotional intelligence and easier to work with? Even if the fees are a little higher, it will make a huge difference. Even the HR managers say that they'd hire a candidate with strong soft skills even if their technical abilities were lacking. As a matter of fact, 67% of the HR managers, say they would rather hire somebody with more soft skills than technical skills, while 9% would hire some with strong technical skills but weak soft skills, the opposite. So human skills, emotional intelligence, can really help advance your career. Oh, that's a beautiful email that I received. I liked it so much, I decided to put it in my presentation. So this is a real email that I received last March. I decided to print it and put it in this presentation to show you a real-life example. So the email says, "Hi, Karine. I'm the HR director. We are 140 employees working remotely and worldwide. I have a manufacturing director who apply on our VP operation open position." And look at the next sentence in yellow. "He did not get it because of his lack of skills in emotional intelligence." Wow. When I saw that, I was, first of all, very impressed by the company because they were willing to do something about it. A lot of companies would have good people. They do a fantastic job. And they kind of, even if they're hard to work with and maybe don't have the best attitude, they kind of let it go because they do such a good job, right? But what happened is the other people that are working with that manager, for example, it's very difficult. And now they go to work and they're not happy. They're not productive. They don't feel like they can trust their manager. They don't feel respected. So that has a big impact on the rest of the employees. And you may lose them, like I was just mentioning, and then you're going to have high turnover. So that company was very smart. They're like, you know what? We know what the problem is. We're going to hire a coach for that director. And we're going to have that person improve their emotional intelligence. And guess what? After 6 months of working and coaching with that client, guess who got the VP position? Yes, he got it because he put the work. Now, let's talk about the 4 core emotional intelligence skills. They are separated in 2 categories: the personal competence and the social competence. First of all, the most important one, it all starts with self-awareness. First of all, you need to be aware of what's going on. And let me give you an example of what awareness is, what self-awareness is. Since we are in the HVAC&R industry, I thought that I could give you an example about a thermostat. Think about it. If you're in a room and there is no thermostat, how are you sending the signal to the AC unit to send either cooling or heating? What's the role of the thermostat? Is to give feedback to the equipment to send cooling or heating. Well, this is exactly the same thing as self-awareness. Self-awareness is having a human thermostat. So you need a feedback mechanism to tell you, hey, how am I feeling? What emotion is happening right now? So if you have a room, no thermostat, you don't know what's going on. If you install a thermostat, then you're like, oh, yes, I can sense that it's warm in the room. Let's send a message to the unit to send some cooling. So now you're aware with the thermostat that it's too hot. And then how you manage it is you send a signal to the unit to send some cooling. So self-awareness and self-management. Now that you're taking care of yourself, your own office, your own room, what about your coworker's office? Or what about your kids' room? What's going on in their room? Do they have a thermostat? Do you know how they feel? What's going on in their life? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? That social awareness to find out what's going on with the others. And after you know how you build your relationship, how you adjust your relationship, how you manage your relationship, putting yourself in their shoes, showing empathy. So these are the 4 cores: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management. By now, I hope that you have a better understanding of why emotional intelligence is important. And before we move into strategies, I would like to ask you to please rate your level of emotional intelligence. So if you think about it, if you take a couple seconds and you look at how you are aware of the emotions that come into yourself, how good are you at reacting to the emotions? How sensitive are you at recognizing the emotions within the other people? How are you showing empathy with others? How are you putting yourself in others' shoes? Knowing all of this, how would you rate your emotional intelligence? Now, I'm going to take a wild guess here, but probably not a lot of people had a 10 out of 10. So let's say that you have maybe 9 and below out of 10. That means that there is room to improve your emotional intelligence. So let me share with you some strategies in the 4 core emotional intelligence skills that you can use to improve. But a word of caution. It takes time, so you really have to be patient. Actually, I started working on it in 2012. So I've been working on it for a long time, and guess what? I never stop. And I don't want to stop. Because it's just like kayaking or paddleboarding. When you stop paddling, you drift back. So you just need to keep going and be patient. So what you need to do is to train your brain. So how you do that is by being consistent. So the more you work on those strategies, the more you apply them, the better you're going to become. So you need to be consistent. Just like brushing your teeth, you cannot just brush your teeth once a week, right? And expect to have no cavity. Or going to the gym and working out once a month and expect to be all in shape. So you really need to be consistent. Every day you do it, you work on yourself, and you improve your emotional intelligence. So let's start with the first emotional intelligence skills, self-awareness strategies. Observe the ripple effect of your emotions. A long time ago, I was in a meeting, and I'm sitting in the first row, good students, paying attention, raising my hand for question. And at what point during the meeting, I asked a question And the manager looked at me and he said, Karine, why are you even asking this question? You should know this already. Wow. Okay. How do you think it made me feel? Do you think that I wanted to ask more questions after that? What about the other people in the room? Do you think that they wanted to ask a question? So that manager was not aware of the ripple effect of what they just did, of their emotions. Know who and what pushes your button. If you know you're working on a project and you have this person, this individual that maybe you have a hard time dealing with, you often have some conflict. Well, the fact that you know you're going to see them or work with them, be aware of that, and it will help you manage better your emotions instead of just having a bad attitude or reacting to the conflict, for example. Same thing with an everyday traffic example. If you know you're going to leave work and you go sit in traffic for an hour, well, instead of being mad and be frustrated, be aware. You're aware you're going to sit in traffic, then it's going to be easier to manage, right? It's okay to be in a bad mood. Emotional intelligence is not always about being in a good mood. What I did when I was working with my team, I would just come in, like, let's say it's a Monday morning and I'm tired and I know I'm in a bad mood. I'm aware of it. Well, I would just tell my team, hey guys, I'm tired. I had a tough weekend. Can you just please leave me alone today? And guess what? They did. But the Karine version 1 would not be aware that she's in a bad mood. And then she would show up at work and just overreact or have a bad attitude to kind of show that she was in a bad mood instead of mentioning it. But now, knowing what I know, Karine version 2, I am aware. I say it. Another strategy is to feel your emotions physically. What do you feel when you get upset, frustrated, when you receive a bad email, or you deal with somebody with a bad attitude? What are you feeling physically? Are you getting tense? Are your shoulders going up? Do you feel your heartbeat strong? So this is another strategy that you can use, like, okay, I feel it. I'm aware right now that I'm being controlled by my emotions. So I'm going to stop right now. And finally, be aware of your tone. I called a guy in the office a couple months ago, and I call and he answered the phone. It's like, hey, what, Karine? And it was so rude on the phone. I was like, okay, what's going on? Let me call you back. And he insisted. He was like, no. What do you need? And I was like, you know what? I don't want to talk to you right now. Obviously, you're going through some things. So finally, he was like, oh, I'm so sorry, Karine. I'm just so tired. I'm busy. It's been madness. And then I told him, I said, hey, the way you answer the phone is not good. Maybe you're not aware of your tone. And maybe you should pay attention to it. And he was like, ooh, yeah, that's true, Karine. I'm so sorry. Actually, every time I would call him back after, it was like the tone was totally different. He was very, very nice. Actually, I have a client that I work with, and a young engineer. And the way he would communicate with me was kind of disrespectful. The way he was kind of commending me to work with him on project. And then one day I asked him, I says, "Hey, Amar, why are you acting like that with me? What's going on? Did I do something to you?" I even asked my coworker, "Hey, is Amar treating you like that? Did I do something?" And then Amar is like, "No, Karine. Actually, this is the way my boss treats me. This is the way he talks to me." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, do you like it when he talks to you like this?" And then he was like, "Well, no, not really." And I'm like, "Hello? So why do you do that to me?" So he took the feedback pretty well, actually. I was surprised. I was ready to lose my customer. But he took the feedback well, and he changed. And actually, a couple months after, I heard that he quit and he went to work for another company. But he was not aware. He was not aware of his tone. He was not aware of how disrespectful he was with me when we're working together. So now that you know and you're more aware about your emotions, how do you manage yourself? How do you manage your emotions? How do you control? How do you respond? How do you react? Well, the first strategy you can do is to take some deep breath. I used to do yoga, and I realized that every time I had like an event that would be stressful or something that would come up, I would find myself doing some deep breathing, and that was very helpful. Another way is to make your goals public. Just like telling the whole world you're going to run a marathon, if you tell people that you're going to work on your emotional intelligence, most likely you will do it because you tell everybody. So you need to be accountable. I know I told my coworker at the office, my team, that I was working on emotional intelligence. And I would show up in the office and let's say I would be frustrated about maybe a wrong voltage on a unit order that was placed. And then my team would be like, "EQ, Karine, EQ." Or it would be, even if I would have a group text, they would say EQ. And right away I knew I had a signal that I needed to control myself a little bit more. So I made my goals public. I told everybody that I was working on my emotional intelligence. Another way is to count to 10. Just silently, you can count to 10. Now, the more fun, the funnest or the nicest strategy and the self-management is the 24-hour rule. I love the 24-hour rule. Actually, some of the chapters that I spoke to told me that they had a 48-hour rule, which I had never heard about before. So the 24-hour rule is, you remember Karine, the version 1 on the picture? Well, she would get an email that would upset her. And the first thing she would do is to type back, and press send. And then the person would reply back, and then I would reply back, and then the war would just start. Until my boss would show up in my office asking me, "Karine, can you tell me what's going on?" And then I would have to explain, "No, but they're wrong and I'm right." And now, Karine version 2, who knows better, has some strategy to improve her emotional intelligence. So now I apply the 24-hour rule. So now what I do is when I get those emails, because I still get those frustrated emails, right? I still type it because it feels good, right? Taka, 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 but I don't touch anything. And then what I do is I go to sleep and I wait 24 hours. And then I go back to my computer, and then what do you think I do? Delete, 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 delete. I'm so sorry. Let's find a solution. Let's work together, and then enter. Just this, it makes a huge difference. That's a very good strategy. Like I said, some people wait 48 hours, so it really depends on the person. And finally, the last strategy in the self-management is getting more sleep. When you don't get enough sleep, you're 60% more reactive than usual. So it's very important. I don't know if you noticed it, but when you're at the airport, I see a lot of people not managing their emotion very often. And I would guess it's because of the lack of sleep. Same thing in your family. If you see that maybe your kids are louder than usual and you may be complaining, well, you may be thinking, hey, maybe it's me. Maybe I didn't sleep enough. Maybe I'm overreacting right now. So sleep is very important. Okay, now that we took care of the self-awareness and self-management strategy, now let's focus on others. The first one for social awareness strategies is to greet people by their name. The second one is to pay attention to body language. Because when you communicate, we use words, we use tones, and we use the body language. But what we say, the word we say, only accounts for 7% of what is believed. And the way we say it, our tone, accounts for 38%. And what others see, like our body language, it accounts for 55%. This is called the 7-38-55 rule. And we actually use this rule also in negotiation. So the body language, what people see, it accounts for 55%. So if you say something nice, but your body language shows something else, it doesn't work. Or if you see a coworker, a friend, or family, and you see that they're not feeling good, then pay attention to their body language. That's social awareness. You may also want to go on a 15-minute walk in the office. I had a boss who did that, and I really thought that he was just tired and he wanted to take a break. But then I realized that during his walk, he would go and talk to all his employees, and he would ask them, how's everything at work? How's everything at home? Are we having any problems? So by doing this, he was becoming more socially aware. He would know what's happening in his department, in the company, with everything that has to do with the business. It helped him become more socially aware. And finally, make timing everything. When I first started in the industry, I asked my boss for a raise. So I was very decided. I wanted to go get the raise. I knew exactly what I wanted. I worked hard. I started early. I prepared my speech, what I wanted to say, my argument. And then I show up to the office. I knock. And then I see his face. And I'm like, uh-oh. What, Karine? I knew that that was not a good time. I knew that something must have happened, that maybe he was stressed, he was tired, or the timing was not good. So do you think that I asked for my raise? I said, you know what? I see that you're busy. I will be back. And I just turned around and I went back another day. Do you think that if I was not socially aware, that I didn't pay attention to how he was, and I would have just asked him for a raise, do you think I would have gotten that raise? Probably not, right? Now, let's move for the last emotional intelligence skills, the relationship management strategies. First, be open and curious about others. Second, remember the little things, the thank you, the please, the I'm sorry. These goes a long way. These go a long way. Take feedback well. That's the most important part in the most important strategy in this slide. Take feedback well. Think about it. When I got feedback from my mentor about my low emotional intelligence, about me being mad all the time, if I didn't take the feedback well, would I be the version 2 right now? Probably not. I would probably still be the version 1 and be miserable about it and make everybody's life miserable as well. And my client, Amar, if he didn't take the feedback well, what would have happened to him? He would still probably working in the same company, dealing with the same manager, and be disrespectful by email to me as well. But he took the feedback well. Another strategy is to have an open door policy. Our CEO always have an open door policy. I know I can walk in his office any time of the day. I don't need to be special. I don't have to have a good reason. I don't need to make an appointment with the assistant. I can just show up. I will knock on the door and find out, hey, are you available to talk? How do you think this makes me feel as an employee? It makes me feel wonderful, seen, heard. Do you think that I want to work harder after that for the company? Absolutely. This is a very good strategy to have. And the last one on this slide is to only get mad on purpose. If you're always mad, then you cannot be more mad, right? So be intentional when you're mad. Now that you have learned about the strategies to improve your emotional intelligence, I would like to challenge you to turn this knowledge into action. Just like I mentioned at the beginning, knowledge is power, but only if you take action. So I hope that there is one takeaway that you took today that you can apply and change and improve your behavior. And I would like to end this presentation with a story. And this story is an everyday example where you wouldn't think that emotional intelligence is, and then you realize that you had the 4 core emotional intelligence skills. Let me tell you about it. I live in Los Angeles. I'm driving every Monday morning for a sales meeting, and I cannot be late. That's the rule in the office. You don't want to be late to the sales meeting. So, like every Monday morning, jump in the car, drive, and maybe 30 minutes before I arrive to the coffee shop, I pull over, I go to my app, my coffee app, and I order a mobile coffee order. So I can just pick it up and go, and I make my meeting on time. So that morning, I pull over, go to my app, try to order the coffee. It's not working. Okay, no problem. Sign out, sign in, not working. Re-download the app, not working. At this time, I'm not happy. It's Monday morning, I'm tired, I want my coffee, and I don't want to be late. So I'm feeling frustrated. I grab the wheel and I decide, okay, let me just go to the coffee shop, and I'm just hoping that there's not a lot of people in line for the coffee. So I go, I park the car, rush to the coffee shop. There is only 2 people in line. I wait patiently, and finally I come to the cash register, and the lady asks me and tell me how much it costs. Then I'm ready. I want to go fast. I have my phone. I have my Apple Pay, and I just put my phone. It's not working. I'm trying. Not working. And then she's like, it looks like you may have to use your credit card. My credit card is in the car. I just came with my phone. I want to be fast. I need to make it quick. I have a sales meeting. I don't want to be late. And then I tell the cash register, the lady, I tell her, I'm like, oh my God, I'm having such a bad Monday morning. The app doesn't work. I cannot do my mobile order. Now I cannot pay electronically. And she looked at me and she's like, oh, I'm so sorry about that. You know what? Coffee's on us this morning. I was like, wow. Coffee? Free coffee? Because of the way I reacted? I was so impressed. And then I looked back at the situation and I analyzed it. And I realized that the 4 core emotional skills were in this example. The first one, the self-awareness, happened when I pulled over and the app was not working. Then I realized, I'm like, I'm aware that I'm getting frustrated. I could feel the physical emotions in my body when I was cringing about the wheel. And then, how I manage my emotion. I still kept a good attitude when I told the cash register, hey, I'm having such a bad morning. So first I was aware. Secondly, I had good self-control. I managed myself very well. I told her. And then on her side, she practiced social awareness because she recognized how frustrated or how tired I was. And then she used the last one about relationship management by offering me free coffee. See, this is just an easy, everyday example where you can practice strategies about emotional intelligence. So we have discussed what is emotional intelligence, why is it so important. We talked about the 4 core emotional intelligence skills, and we ended with strategies to improve your emotional intelligence. Remember the most important part. Remember what's hidden under the surface. That Titanic, again, it didn't sink because of the tip of the iceberg. So I would challenge you to focus on what's important and what is hidden. And this won't save your life, like in the Titanic, but it will help you be more productive, happier, and I guarantee you more successful. My name is Karine Leblanc. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm an ASHRAE Distinguished Lecturer, and I've been a member for over 20 years. I thank you for watching ASHRAE Tech Hours. If you would like to get in touch, you can scan that code. And if you would like to rate this presentation, you can also scan this QR code and enter the code TechHour. You will get a bonus at the end and you will have access to all other Tech Hour video. Thank you so much.